in my experience, sometimes time moves really slowly. So for example, when I went to college, it took me 7 years to finish. My GPA was 2.16. So a lot of my friends graduated magna cum laude and summa cum laude. I just graduated thank the laude. Can't believe he even made it, right? But those 7 years seemed like a long time. Speaking of college, in 22 days, my oldest son is going to go off to college. I'm a little worried that those 22 days are going to go very fast. Yeah. So measuring time is something that's interesting. It's easy for me to measure the things that I do, right? Go on a walk, that's an hour. Watch Moana with my children, 98 minutes runtime. Commute to work and back, 45 minutes. But what's harder for me to do is measure the time that I'm not doing something. Now, if this sounds mysterious to you, that's okay. This is like the teaser, right? How do you measure the things you don't do or measure the things you don't have to do? So we're gonna talk about how you measure the time you don't have to do in just a minute. But first, I wanna tell you a story. It's an immigrant story, but there's a little bit of a twist. My father was born right around the end of World War II in a war-torn country in Europe. He immigrated here with just the clothes on his back. 3 different times before he moved to the United States, his mother got a knock on the door. I'm sorry, one of your sons has died in the war. I'm sorry, one of your sons has died 3 times. He lost his 3 older brothers. Came to a country where he could not speak the language. All he could say in English is, I am a boy, and he thought everybody in the United States were cowboys because that's how the media portrayed us over in Europe. Fortunately, there was a church in a little town called High Point, North Carolina that was sponsoring refugees. This church helped my family get a start here, helped them get their first apartment. Yes, the apartment had rats in it, but helped them get their first apartment, right? Now, the particular family that supported my dad and his brother and one surviving sister and parents, that family was the Dowdy family. When my grandmother talked about the pantheon of awesomeness, it was like Jesus, John F. Kennedy, Mr. Dowdy, right? Mr. Dowdy was like, he literally saved our family's life. So if you're good at math, you'll know that if I told you my dad was born right around the end of World War II, by the time he was a teenager, we're talking about the 1960s. Yes. As it so happened, Mr. Dowdy owned a small drugstore chain in High Point and Greensboro, North Carolina called the Mann's Drugstore Chain. Yeah. Wow. Taking me back. Yeah. Mr. Dowdy hired my dad, my 14-year-old dad, as a stock boy in his drugstore. And my dad got to be the witness of history. If you know what was happening in the 1960s at lunch counters, at drugstores in Greensboro and High Point, North Carolina, you know what I'm talking about. It was the sit-in movement. There were brave black people who were being denied access to the lunch counter saying, we would like to be served here. Not far from here is the International Civil Rights Museum, where that tells the story of the Greensboro Four, sometimes also known as the A&T Four, and how they bravely risked their lives to get service at a whites-only lunch counter. Now, if you visit that museum, you'll also hear that when those men went to class, others filled those seats, including students from Dudley High School and the women of Bennett College. Now, the men of North Carolina A&T have a statue on their campus commemorating their bravery, and I'm excited and hopeful that one day the women of Bennett College will have one as well. Mr. Dowdy had a manager who was denying black people access to the lunch counter, denying black veterans who'd fought in the war access to the lunch counter, and my dad could sit there. My dad, an immigrant who happened to be white, right? The A&T Four who organized that sit-in had to organize, they had to think, they had to coordinate. One of them was in the ROTC, and he thought maybe if I wear my uniform, that will provide me some layer of protection in this life-threatening situation, right? My dad did not have to spend that time to think about what he was going to wear to the lunch counter, to think about the conversation he might have. He didn't have to spend that time. So we're back to talking about time. How do we measure our privilege? My father came here with nothing but the clothes on his back and white privilege. He was handed it the moment he got here. How do we measure it, though? So I used to work at a women's college. It was an amazing, amazing experience. I was the assistant dean of students. And in my building, I worked in the student center, and we had a women's room upstairs and a women's room downstairs, restrooms, and then one single gender restroom, which is the only place I could go to the bathroom. Sometimes I would have, I'd be in my office, I'd have to go to the bathroom and walk over. It would be locked. And I would get grumpy. Gosh, why is the bathroom, I got a meeting and I have to wait. And then I pause. And then I realize, wait a second. My wife has been waiting to go to the bathroom for 45 years. Every sporting event, every concert, every Broadway show, every graduation, every crowded restaurant has had to think about some extra time. So I got out my calculator. I thought, how many of these events do I go to in a year? I averaged maybe 40. I've been attending these events for about 45 years, which is about 1,800 events. And if I figured that I had not waited in line for the bathroom for 10 minutes at each of those events, that's 300 hours. 300 hours in my life, I have not waited to go to the bathroom. What can I do with those 300 hours today to uplift women? What can I do with those 300 hours today to listen to women's voices and to center on women? What can I do with those 300? I have 300 hours in the bank, y'all. I've got some time, right? So what can I do with that time? You may have noticed I'm white. I don't know what the contrast on the video is going to look like, but yeah. And most of my life, I've worked in white spaces. I've been in finance. I've been in higher education. I've worked in restaurants. I've been a pharmacy technician. You would not believe my resume. I've done a lot of different things, but most places, it's a white-dominated space. Often I walk into a room, whether it's a room with people in my department, meeting with another department, going to a professional conference, doing some professional development, walking into a session. And do you know what I never do? I never spend 10 to 15 seconds scanning the room to look for people who look like me. I'm gonna say that again. I never take 10 to 15 seconds to scan the room looking for people who look like me. I think that that's something that's unique to me as a white person. I figure I've been working for more than 25 years. I likely enter about 10 rooms a week, which is 520 a year, and 13,000 over my working lifetime. 260,000 seconds or 722 hours. I think if I were not white, I might spend 10 to 15 seconds each time I entered a room. I think if I were Black or Latino, Latina, Latinx, I think I might pause and look around the room for a few seconds. I've banked up those seconds. Every room I've ever entered, I haven't had to look around. I have not spent those 10 to 15 seconds. So I have 722 hours. You know what I can do with those 722 hours? I can get on Google and say, is this phrase racist? I can look up the background of the word picnic. I can look up the history of the cakewalk. I'm not gonna do your homework for you. One of those has racist roots and one does not, and it might not be what you think. But you know what? You know how that took me 30 seconds? So now I got 721 hours, 59 minutes, and 30 seconds left to center on Black people, Black voices, Latino, Latina, Latinx folks, and our indigenous communities, right? So the calculator is good for this. I don't know if y'all could catch this. I needed the calculator to do this work. Sometimes the calculator doesn't work, though. Sometimes I need to do more. These remind me of time that I have because I don't have to wait in the bathroom, and I don't scan a room to look for people who look like me. But also sometimes our time gets stolen from us. When I was in high school, I opened up a book and read about slavery, and I keep reading the word slaves. Well, I'm gonna make an editorial note. Dear textbook from my high school, there's no such thing as slaves. There's such thing as humans who were enslaved, all right? There were mothers, fathers, sisters, brothers, siblings. There were teachers, healers, kings, and queens who were then stolen and enslaved, all right? Editorial note to those textbooks. Their labor was stolen. Their labor was stolen. USA Today did a survey and asked about reparations. And there was a little bit of enthusiasm, maybe 20%, some sort of lukewarm sentiment, and then a lot of opposition. But when they asked the question, if one person had property and a second person stole it from them, and then that second person gave it to a third person, does the original person have the right to their property back? And overwhelmingly, the answer was yes. So for this next exercise, a calculator wasn't going to do it. I needed a spreadsheet because we're gonna do some big time math here. I looked up what a non-enslaved day laborer would have earned in their lifetime in 1680. A non-enslaved day laborer. $1,500 roughly in those dollars. In today's dollars, $52,000, adjusted for what today's dollars. That's still not much. That's a day laborer's lifetime earning, $52,000. Now, if you're familiar with how endowments work at nonprofits, at colleges and universities and governments, that people count on about 5% return on investment. So you know what I did? I put $52,000 in a spreadsheet, compounded it at 5% interest to the year 2022. $982 billion from one human's stolen labor. One. If you want to be some kind of way and have and poke some holes, well, nobody actually gets to keep a $100 savings account from 1680, a $100 savings account would still have been about $29 million. Solving this problem and all of these problems is going to take time, energy, and bright minds. Here's the thing, though, about time. Apparently, I have a lot of it. Thank you.